So the Europeans, who have provided as much or more support than the Americans in this process, you don't think should be at the table directly. You think it should be two protagonists.
As I said, I'm a school of realism. I think that's not going to happen.
So Zelenskyy's job is on the line. Vladimir Putin is having the last laugh. Where does that leave Europe? What options does Brussels have? The EU announced new sanctions on Russia today. This package bans 48 individuals and 35 Russian entities. It also bans aluminium imports from Russia. Meanwhile, European leaders have gone into a huddle. There's another meeting in Paris, the second one in 3 days. They're calling it an emergency summit. The first one, which took place on Monday, was attended by 7 EU leaders. This time, the list is longer. Paris has invited several smaller EU nations, also Canada. Remember, Canada is a NATO member, and it's joining the meeting in that capacity. No prizes for guessing what's on the agenda. The war in Ukraine and how to stay relevant. If the US withdraws its security umbrella, how will Europe defend itself? Will they have to follow Trump's lead? Will they be forced to accept his Ukraine deal? Can Europe offer an alternative? They will discuss all of this. Also talk about increasing defense spending and deploying European soldiers in Ukraine. These conversations have been on for a while, but there's no consensus yet. For instance, defense spending. Europe wants to boost its defenses. How much would that cost? In the next 10 years, the EU would need $500 billion for defense. This is the estimate that Brussels has come up with, $500 billion, which is a large sum. Where will all this money come from? Certainly not from the United States. Trump is already complaining about it.
And I think Europe has given $100 billion, and we've given, let's say, 300 plus. And it's more important for them than it is for us. We have an ocean in between, and they don't. But where is all the money that's been given? Where is it going? And I've never seen an accounting of it. We give hundreds of billions of dollars. I don't see any accounting.
Trump doesn't want to foot the bill for Europe's security. He has made this abundantly clear on multiple occasions. So where will Europe find the $500 billion it needs? One option is to exempt defense spending from the bloc's budget rules. Currently, EU laws have placed a cap on government deficit. What is government deficit? It is the difference between the spending and the earnings of a government. When a government's earnings fall short of its expenses, it leads to a deficit. Right now, EU nations have a cap on their deficit. They cannot allow their deficit to rise above 3% of their GDP. That is the law. Now, if defense is exempted from this rule, these governments can spend more on military upgrades. So that's one option for them. The second option is to introduce joint borrowing plans. Instead of each member taking on more debt individually, the bloc could borrow as a collective and then distribute funds to each member state. This would ease the debt burden for everyone. Another option is to reallocate existing budgets. With some clever accounting, Europe could free up money and meet its defense needs. Countries like Poland are already on board. They are willing to boost defenses both for Ukraine and for Europe, even if it means pushing their economies into more debt. Warsaw believes this is a logical course of action.
We received very important confirmation, especially very important for us, that investments in defense will no longer be treated as excessive spending. And this is an important change. I won't say revolutionary, but in the history of the European Union, this is a very serious concession to logic, which Poland has been talking about for many months at various meetings in Europe.
So raising more money is one option, but in recent days, another idea has been thrown around: sending European soldiers to protect Ukraine. France and Sweden have shown interest. The United Kingdom is ready to deploy troops immediately. Remember, the UK is no longer a part of the EU, but it remains a part of NATO. If Europe pursues this plan, how many troops would they need? Somewhere between 40,000 and 150,000 soldiers. It's a significant number, also a broad range. It would require a broad consensus. And that is Europe's biggest challenge. Whether it's funding or deploying troops, European nations remain divided on all fronts. And this is especially true for Germany, which is one of the biggest and most influential members of the EU. Germany remains reluctant to send more money to Ukraine. It is also hesitant when it comes to troop deployments.
There must be no division of security and responsibilities between Europe and the US, which means that NATO is based on the fact that we always act together and are at risk together and guarantee our security through this.
Olaf Scholz prefers to wait and watch, which is not surprising given that his own political future is uncertain. Germany is going to polls on Sunday, this Sunday. A change in leadership is expected, and by extension, a change in policy. So Brussels should not count on Berlin yet. Even politically stable partners like Italy are hesitating. Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni is against deploying troops to Ukraine. She has called it, and I'm quoting, the most difficult and the least effective option. So this is how things stand. Europe wants a seat at the negotiating table. It wants to protect Ukraine. It wants to deter future Russian aggression. But it cannot make up its mind and get its ducks in a row.
Merci beaucoup. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Namaste, Mr. President.
Bharat Kelogan, Komeri Namaste.
How many people generally follow you in interviews?
Typically in a month, we have viewers up to 150 million. That's more than twice the population of France. And in the last 2 years, we had 3 billion viewers. So I say, Laurent, this is your chance to be famous. You're on Firstpost. One word to describe your equation with Prime Minister Modi.
Amitié.
As India and France work together, are you creating a new era of non-alignment in the technology space?
India is a training superpower. 1 million engineers a year, more than all of Europe and the US combined. So we have that partnership. We have a partnership on the environment and the economy. We also have civilian nuclear programs, and that is something we've developed far beyond the France-India relationship. So we want to work together on AI.
And then comes China with its DeepSeek, creating models at a fraction of the cost. Did that innovation take you by surprise? Did that breakthrough make you sit up and think, what did the Chinese do and how?
But what did DeepSeek do? They took everything that was already available from the last AI model, and then they recalibrated it.
So are you going to ban Chinese AI in France?
So we don't have this American approach of banning tech because of where it comes from.